welcome to the Screen Podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Wendy Mitchell, a contributing editor at Screen International and Screen Daily, and we are bringing you insight and analysis of the global film industry in this weekly podcast. Today's the day that the Berlinale is kicking off and the European film market. Of course, this means buying and selling of new films that are premiering. But what else is really happening at the Martin Gropius Ball or in the lobby of the Ritz? There are going to be thousands of meetings about new films. Who do you partner with for them? How do you get them financed? So we thought it was a great week to talk to two important funders. First up, Screen's European editor Tim Dams is talking to Alexandra Lebret, who is head of the new Together Fund with Axio Capital. This could start to have a big impact in Europe. They hope to raise 100 million. You can hear from Alexandra about their first investment in the Belgian company Caviar. And then I'm going to talk to IPR.VC's managing partner, Andrea Scarso. This is a fund that's been around for about 12 years and really ramped up, has partnered with the likes of A24, Red Bull Studios, XYZ Films, MK and Andrea is also an executive producer on Marty Supreme. So I will first hand over to Tim and Alexandra, and then we'll be back with Andrea.
So, hello, I'm Tim Dams, the Europe editor of Screen International. I'm joined today by Alexandra Lebret, the managing director of Paris-based film and TV-focused investment fund, the Together Fund, which is notable for a number of reasons, one being that there aren't really that many investment funds focused on the European film and TV industry. Hi, Alexandra. Welcome to the Screen Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. So happy to be here.
And before we kind of kick off with a few questions, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about you. And many listeners will know Alexandra from her high-profile former role as managing director of the European Producers Club, which represents many of Europe's leading film producers. And after a 20-year spell at the EPC, she left last year to join the Together Fund in partnership with Paris-based investment firm Axio Capital. The Together Fund has so far raised 58 million euros to invest in European independent film and television production companies. And we're talking today because the Together Fund recently made its first investment into top Belgium-based producer Caviar, whose impressive list of credits include Oscar winner Sound of Metal. So Alexandra, first of all, a straight question. Why have you backed Caviar? Why are they the first company you've invested in? And kind of what's your thinking behind the investment?
Following a few dossiers at the Together Fund, not to say hundreds of requests that we received from the producer, the fact that I knew Bert for many years because he was a member of the EPC, and I followed his trajectory, which is absolutely successful for many years, made it easy to conclude that first deal. I really believed in him, and private equity in investment is a lot about men and women. Then the nature of the operation was exactly what we were looking for: a management buyout, which can be something that is a strange word for our industry who is not yet familiar with the private equity world. Is when there is a management that is trying to buy back its shares, and we accompanied the management to buy back that shares. This is a situation that we like very much because we empower the management to continue their growth, and they are entirely aligned with the interests of the private equity fund, us, in order to continue what they have been doing. And I really had a huge trust in all the team, not only Bert. Caviar team is fantastic, and you have highly valuable people there. And so it was for that, he became, for the nature of the team and the nature of the deal, he became our priority. And so that's why I joined the Axio team less than a year ago, and the fund was launched in April. So it means very few months to conclude that first deal, and I'm very happy to have done it.
And also, Caviar are an interesting company, aren't they? Because they're active in film, television, very active in commercials as well. And they're Belgium-based, but they've got bases in LA, London, key European capitals, Paris, Amsterdam, and everything. Is that the kind of size and scale of company that you're interested in? Is there something attractive about that for you?
It's a very high level company, meaning in terms of a range of products they are producing, as well as of content they are producing, as well as turnover. I think it will not be the rule for the future. We just started by an exception and going into the Himalaya. Now we are going to different mountains. It was an occasion. It was an opportunity that we didn't want to let go. So it's a good example. It's a good example of what a production company coming from a low capacity country can do. And because, such a company, 200 million turnover, built out of Belgium, Flemish Belgium, look a little bit strange, but what Bert and Matthias and Michael, the three owners of the company, did is really huge. They develop the branded content is more scripted. It's not advertising. It's a little film that are linked to the value of a company. It's a little bit different because what you can see in every scope that Caviar is covering is that there is that notion of scripted inside. Branded is scripted, but also the way they are doing unscripted is always based on, star they have, or there is a little story into that. It's not only Master Chief and so having developed that notion of scripted in different format is the key of success of Caviar, coming from such a small country. And they did it widely in the US, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in many countries, in the UK, in France, and expanding their formats, the way they produce, the kind of format they produce, but also the countries inside which they are producing.
Thank you. And actually, just winding back a little bit, can you just tell us a little bit about the Together Fund? Who your investors are. I think you have core investment from the European Investment Fund, and how you've kind of really got it off the ground.
Actually, the Together Fund was born out of an initiative from the European Investment Fund, which managed the money of media invests. So it's a range of a succession of opportunities media invest created 400 million funds in order to enhance the private equity into the sector through two ways. One is a guarantee upon MG, and the other one is the equity financing. We knock at the door of the EIF at the equity financing. Then the fund is managed by the EIF, meaning that it is responding to criteria, financial criteria, and not only cultural criteria, meaning that the rules applying to the EIF are not the rules applying to the media program. But the fund is dedicated to independent production company in Europe. The EIF gave us 25 million euros, but we had to find other sources of financing. Axio Capital is one of the big supporters in terms of finance, but it's also managing the fund. So we are still increasing our subscribers, and we are very happy to welcome anyone.
And you're looking, I think, to invest in about 12 to 15, European production companies. Can you just tell us a little bit about your investment criteria? What and who you're looking to invest in? What's attractive to you as an investment?
Private equity is all about accompanying company in their growth. So you need to have that idea of growth that you want to lead for your company. And it's very important to have that in mind. The duration of the fund is 10 years, meaning after 10 years, we need to give the money back. So, and the way we make profit is when we exit the company. when we get in, we are taking some shares at a certain value, and we hope that the company will have an increased value at the end of the day, and that we will make profit. So this idea of grow is super important. That should be written into a business plan. As I was saying to some producer, a business plan is not an addition of financing plan. You need to have a vision of your sector and where do you want to go and how do you want to achieve a goal and that growth. We all know that, times are very difficult to predict. So everything is, we know that the future is difficult to predict, but what is important is that position of the entrepreneur to go ahead and to try to have that vision that is emboldened into the business plan. So that's something that is very important, and as well as the fact that the company has already proven what they can achieve, meaning we're not doing venture capital, young company. We are really accompanying already established company into the next level of growth.
And what can your investment kind of bring to companies? For them, I wonder what's kind of attractive about being invested in by you compared to a group like Media One or Fremantle, the bigger groups. Why are you an attractive investment for companies, and what kind of level of stake perhaps would you look to invest?
Because they are, we favor a minority position. So we leave the entrepreneur, the producer, to continue its job as he has always done. The bet is super huge for us. We bet on a person, and then we give him the keys. Of course, we are asking for board seats and to take part to certain decision and so on. But the basic of the Together Fund is that we take minority position in order for the producers to continue what they have been doing. So that's a big difference with the group. The producers stay at home. They choose if they want to produce or not. I think that's a very important question, and not to be obliged to do turnover in order to respect some figures. We have that period of time between 3 to 7, and we are not in a hurry. And it's important. We don't expect every year's increase. We expect increase, but not, there is no rhythm that is imposed to the company. And then, but that's also the case with Banijay or Fremantle or Media One. We know very well the sector, and so meaning we can help them to grow by giving them access to our contacts or advice or whatever, or financing. That's something that we want to do with our the companies we're investing in.
I think what makes Together Funds so kind of interesting is, like I said at the beginning, there's not really that many European investment firms focused on film and TV. Kind of only a few spring to mind, like Finland's IPR.VC, France's Logical Pictures, and yourself, and maybe others. But why is there such a scarcity of private equity money in the creative, specifically in the film and TV industries, really, and particularly film?
Because it's a very complicated sector. It's a very complicated sector, and some of the investors have faced some issue in the past because it was not until recently very transparent. It is complicated to apprehend. But the two funds that you mentioned, Logical and IPR, are based on project, where we are the only one based on companies, the only pan-European based on company. And I can tell you that it is complicated, even for me, who, I know everyone in every country and every regulation. It's very complicated to apprehend a company, and even the way the film is comptabilized, or the tax credit is different from a country to another. So you need to have a huge knowledge of the each country's regulation, and in order to be sure that you are making the right choice. And that knowledge is, I think it's not yet very spread, and it should be in the future. But what we hope is that we will not be alone, and we will have other funds coming into the market. We push that because competition is good, because it creates liquidity and it creates confidence, and that's exactly what we need today.
When you go and meet with potential investors, yes, what is the kind of reception you find? What is selling an investment fund like yours to investors?
For the retailers, they are more focused on the emotional aspect of the investment. They want to be linked directly to a film or to a star or to, so it's very complicated to convince them. But we have few. And for institutional investors, our sector is like, we are saltimbanque, as we said in French. We are people from saltimbanque. I don't know how to translate that, but they are not taking it very seriously. So you need, on one case, not to make it too seriously in order to keep that emotional investment, and on the other case, to do some comparison with other very serious sectors. So it's a little bit contradictory, but as as long as we haven't proven how much valuable is the sector, it is. Look at Banijay results; they are amazing. We are facing difficulties to convince investors. Apart from the fact that many institutional investors that we met were focusing on into one country. And it reminds me the beginning of the EPC, when I was knocking at the door to find a little bit of grants to support our political action. They were all telling me, okay, but we are supporting you only for German action or for German position, and for building Europe is still a long way ahead. And we could manage the EPC, so I'm sure we'll succeed in Together Fund.
And what about Europe's film industry though, and television industry? It's come off a real post-COVID kind of boom. Things went up, and there's it seems to there's a pretty big deflation going on at the moment. Well, in terms of the industry, contraction in terms of the industry going on at the moment. And you got the associated problems of costs continuing to rise, and it seems a challenging kind of moment for the industry. And obviously, film and TV industry is very cyclical, and there are lots of periods of challenge. But this one seems kind of particularly kind of notable. So I was just wondering, is this a good, how are investors responding to that? Is this a good time to be an investor in this industry? Is it a low point perhaps that can only go up? I don't know.
It's always a good time. If you think there's a crisis creates opportunities. I don't see that, period as a crisis, by the way. I think we are just opening a new chapter for the cinema, for the theatrical release in all over Europe. I know that many figures have been announced by decreasing, less 15%, less 20%, or equivalent to the COVID period, pre-COVID period. But look into details. What is not working is the US film, because they are not there into theaters, because they are not produced. They are produced for SVOD platform, not for theaters anymore. But look at the results of the European cinema. It's huge. And it's taking place in the center of the city, because people are not moving as they used to do, because of green reason, because of whatever, because of the prices of the theater that are less expensive into the center. And if you look into more details, into more granularity, there is a lot of hope, because it's the young people who are starting to go back to the theaters in the center of the city to see different films. And that's where Europe is very strong, to do different films. So for me, we are just opening a new area that is going to be very extremely powerful for the European cinema.
Thank you. That's good to have a kind of optimistic take. And so just quickly looking ahead, what's the next steps for Together Fund? What can we expect well, when can we expect some more news from you? And can you give us any hint of what might be next for you as well in terms of acquisitions?
Yes, you will have some news before. I hope to have 2 news to announce in the Q1, in the first trimester. New
Can you
investment in different countries and different kind of size of company. I cannot say more, but I will let you know as soon as it's public.
Well, Alexandra, thank you very much. We'll look forward to keeping in touch with you and the Together Fund, and all the very best for the year ahead. Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us on the Screen podcast.
Thank you, Tim. See you soon.
See you soon.
I am here with Andrea Scarso, who is managing partner at film investment fund IPR.VC, which first started in 2014. The company you might have heard of because they have slate deals with the likes of A24, XYZ, MK2. Andrea has been with the company since 2023. He worked at other investment companies before that. And as part of IPR's work with A24, Andrea is also an exec producer on Marty Supreme. That's been quite a hit. So, Andrea, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And I know some people listening might know what IPR.VC does. Some people might never have heard exactly what the company does. So can you start out with just a very basic explainer of the company? Where's the funding coming from? Where's it going to?
Absolutely. So IPR.VC, we are a fund management company. So we raise money from quite traditional capital markets, I would say, mainly institutional investors and family offices. We set up funds in a very traditional private equity setup. But the peculiarity about what we do is that we only invest in the creative sector, especially film and television, but also now looking to expand into other form of IP content. The company was set up about 12 years ago in Helsinki, in Finland. We raised 3 separate funds to date, and nowadays we operate out of London, Helsinki still, and Paris.
Okay, very, very global. We'll talk about that. The fund number 3, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, raised 104 million euros. Is that still sitting part of that in a pot, or is there going to be another fundraising soon? Where does that money sit now?
So yeah, our third fund, we launched investment period in 2024. So we still have at least a couple of years left in investment period. So we are absolutely still investing, still looking for projects. At the same time, we're also thinking about new strategies. We are thinking about raising more money, both for continuation of film and TV investment, but also to start operating into, as I mentioned, the new content economy process.
Okay, great. We'll bring that back up in a second, I think.
Yeah.
And the people, actually, I shouldn't say people, they're institutional investors, pension funds, family offices, entities like that. Are those global? Are a lot of them Finnish? Are they European? Are they all around the world?
So we started working with mainly local institutional investors when the company launched in 2014. But since then, we've expanded into more international LP-based. We currently mainly operating in Europe, and we're looking to expand into more European investment base.
Okay. And the first thing anybody listening, especially producers, will want to know is what kinds of investments you make. Are those always in a slate or a company? Do you ever do single vehicle, like a single production? Can you tell us a little bit more about what you invest in right now?
For sure. So we always wanted to innovate ways of investing in content, right? When we started, we made a few investment into companies. They were across film and television productions, but also music, video games, animation. In the last few years, we focused mostly into project investments around the strategies built around slate investments. But really what we do is we look for strategic partners in the industry people that are gatekeeper in the industry, either in distribution or international sales, or also on the production side. And we are trying to bring them something that they need to growth or to further strengthen what they do, which is, of course, some additional capital. But we are also trying to provide a level of expertise in the areas where they might need some further support. So that could be some financial analysis or some business support, or just some partners to discuss project with. And each partner is different. They're at a different stage of growth. There are companies that are in different life cycles. So we're trying to really adapt what we bring to them depending on what they're looking for.
And as I mentioned at the start, one exciting partner you have is A24. I mean, it doesn't get much hotter than A24 and what is going on in global, especially independent cinema. How far back does that relationship exist between IPR and A24, and why are they the right kind of partner?
Yeah, well, we started working with them a few years ago. We've done about 15 films together so far, and we're looking to continue working with them. Well, they're obviously one of the major mini studio or mini major at the moment, if you wish. And I think it's was really special about them is they've allowed new creative voices and originality in the movies, but with ability to connect with audiences that were some way undeserved by their kind of projects. And I think they set example of how really work with some of the best filmmakers, whether they are sort of emerging filmmakers or some of the most established one, but still in the sort of independent, edgy way, and really think about global distribution, global audiences. And I think that's really what made the relationship so interesting for us at the beginning. And of course, we saw them growing from strength to strength and moving from small budget films into much more ambitious films with bigger star, with bigger filmmakers, but without really losing their approach to make sure that there is always pushing boundaries about new content, creative content, original content, which is really what is becoming more and more relevant, I think, in the industry. The need for new IPs that can find an audience and audiences that can resonate and grow with the IP and around the IP. And I think what has been really special about A24 is this way of creating an ecosystem around the IPs they're working on. So the connection that they can bring, not just for the theatrical experience, but all around the films and the many different things that they're building.
And I'm going to be nosy because it's my job. With somebody like A24, is that a sort of lump sum that you're giving to the company to see how they want to spend it? Is it film by film? You mentioned like 15 projects you've worked on with them. Do they have to come to you and say, do you want to be in on Marty Supreme specifically, or is it just more of a general funding of the business?
I'll try and say as much as I can, but yeah, no, the idea is we come on board as equity financiers into projects. Right, so our involvement is still in the films that we're working on with them. So the idea is to become strategic partners on a few films, which should help them making their decision process a bit easier, taking more projects under production and under distribution, and helping them strategizing over what they want to build. So moving like Marty Supreme, it's it's part of their slate, it's part of their conversations. We discuss projects individually. We also look at some of the upcoming projects that they do. They obviously have a very large pipeline of projects, and then we together we decide what to do.
Great, but you can, if there's some of their films you don't want to work on for any specific reason, you don't have to do that.
Sure. Yeah. No, we don't.
Okay. And with Marty Supreme, again, nosy journalist, can you tell us the figure that IPR put into that, or is that confidential?
probably confidential, but we co-finance part of the budget with them.
Okay, thank you. And how do you see yourself as a creative partner too? Because, you're not just a bank. You come from a film background as well. Are you giving notes on the script of Marty Supreme? Or are you more hands-off than that? How involved are you on a film like that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think we understand the creative process very well. I think people in the organization comes from different background. I was a film financier before. Some of my colleagues are more from a creative production background. Some are accountants. Some comes from the capital market. So I think we understand the creative process very well. But I think what we want to contribute is not a creative input. I think we understand very well that in the process of creating a strategic alliance with these companies, we contribute something they don't do so well themselves. I think it's, for us working with someone like K24 or MK2 or XYZ, Red Bull, we want to work with them because we think they are the best in class in what they do. And what they do is to take care of all the creative process and the distribution and the sales. So we just want to help them in that journey as much as we can. And depending on what the relationship is, and we will contribute more or less depending of what is asked for us to contribute. So we see most of their help on the business side of things and on the financial side of things. Of course, all of us have creative taste, and we would like to add notes and to enter into discussions, but we understand very well that's not what is needed of us. But I believe that we are, really representing well what executive producers means. It's working on the financing, it's helping with the capital raise, but it's also helping figuring out what the best international sales strategy could be, or what the best international partners could be. With some of those companies, we are more active. With some, we're more reactive. But we would like to think that there is a dialogue with all of them, and we really team up on some of the discussions together.
As we've seen, though, international breakouts, were you involved in something like Anatomy of a Fall with MK2?
Unfortunately not,
No.
but it's what has been announced is that we are going to work on the next one, the next film by Justine, which is been packaged at the moment. It's been launched at EFM. We announced it early this week that we are part of that kind of the financing with MK2, so that's very exciting.
And do you ever finance something that comes to you directly from, let's say, a group of producers or a producer, not through one of your existing partners? But I kind of want to know, are you reading scripts yourself to see this could be an investment, or is it always coming through a partner?
No, so last year we expanded operation in Paris. We hired Céline Dornier to be part
Yes.
of the team from Logical Pictures. So part of Céline's job, and also what the other people in the team do, we do read script, and we are sort of monitoring and scouting the market. But right now, in the way we are set up, we are not looking to invest in individual projects. Because again, I think we really believe that we can add more value by bringing these strategic relationships to the table. But each films can be part of one of our slates with one of the partners, or we might be able to just provide some advice on executive producing or financing in an alternative way. So I think we want to keep eyes open and still very well connected with producers, especially producers that are at the moment working on a more and more complex environment of financing or shooting solutions. It's complicated to put together a budget and a financing plan, and I think if we can help in any way, we will try.
You're mentioning that you're making equity investments in these projects. Where do you sit in, I guess, the waterfall or recoupment positions? Does that change project by project? And also, can you fit in quite well with public money, or does that not work so well sometimes?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on a project by project, but we are a risk taker in the sense that we are not interested in the debt component of the financing. So we're not trying to replace a bank. At the moment, we are not looking at that space. The waterfall for each project, it's a little bit different, but I would say every time we are involved, it's unlikely that you see a very complicated waterfall or you see too many players involved. It usually us, a number of co-financiers, maybe a commercial bank, and that's about it. In terms of the public funding, I think we can work with them very well. Again, it depends on the project, but we definitely have a lot of projects that are co-productions, especially in Europe, where there's also access to some public funding, some local incentives, and we'll just respect what the sort of requirements are in those instances.
I'm going to ask the big question, which
Ooh.
is probably something that you have to talk to every investor in IPR.VC. Why do you think the content industries make sense for someone like an institutional investor or a family office? Maybe somebody who doesn't care that much about the end product. Is film still seen as a very risky investment compared to real estate or, commodities or something that we think of as being more stable? How do you convince people to invest in content?
Yeah, it is a big question, but I think we it's around it's our mission as IPR.VC. I think we want to sit in that bridge between the traditional capital markets and the creative industries, and the reason for that is because we believe that the creative and content industry as a whole sits very well in a large portfolio of these type of investors, right? Institutionals, family offices, they have an allocation for alternative asset classes. And within the alternative asset class, the content industry is a perfect it's a perfect candidate, actually. So when we face these investors and the decisions they need to make, we will be put in the same categories as other alternative asset managers. And that's where we want to be. And that's why we're trying to always improve and innovate and looking at ways that that process can be done professional and efficiently. And that's how the core and the backbone of the company has been built.
Hmm. And you mentioned at the start that you're also looking at non-film and TV content opportunities. And I know you've got something called IPR Lab. Can you just tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the strategy around all of that?
Of course, I think again, it's part of what we are trying to innovate and looking at various ways that content has evolved and continue to evolve. A couple of years ago, we realized that we were doing too much just film and TV, but in the sense that we weren't pushing those boundaries in terms of learning and be curious about other part of the industry. So the lab is effectively our internal R&D, where we are spending some of our money, we hire people, and we saw a lot of very, very interesting kind of segment within the macro, let's call it new content economy sector, right? So we are looking at the creator economy, we're looking at the experiential economy, which is live, immersive. We are looking at AI, of course, and we're looking at branded content. And I think now that we've done this research and sort of this networking for about 2 years, we have really found compelling opportunities for us to invest in. And that's what we want to go next. We want to have a separate vehicle to invest into those areas, which is running in parallel with the film and TV strategy, which will continue and is doing extremely well for us. So we are not stopping, we are doubling down in film and TV, but I think we are also not ignoring everything else that is happening around film and TV. And I think it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. We really believe in those IPs, which are now connecting with audiences in a way that it's evolved immensely from the last few years. And we just want to make sure that we bring our strategic approach to those sectors as well.
Watch this space. Yeah, I want to
Watch this
see what
space.
those alternatives might be. As we speak to you, it is the week of the Berlinale, of the European film market. How are you feeling about the market right now? Does it feel quite healthy? Do you think we're going to see a bit of buying and selling in Berlin this year? Or, I mean, on your side, I guess you're looking more long term. What projects and companies are we going to be involved with? Not is this film selling to X distributor and B streamer? Yeah. How are you feeling about the health of the market overall?
No, we feel good. I think there is a lot of very, very interesting projects in the market, both as completed films and as packages. The market is still quite binary in the sense that buyers have to be more careful of how they allocate their budget, but they still have a good budget to spend. So they are still going after the projects they really want, spending big, and they're able to strategize around that. I would say probably the main struggle is still a little bit too much volumes, a little bit too many, in my opinion, too many projects still. And for some of those, it's difficult to find a level that will make it happen. So there are still a lot of projects that unfortunately don't convert into packages that don't convert into real projects. So that kind of is still there, and hopefully will improve this year. There are new distributors in the US, which of course is very welcome, and there are new financiers. So I don't think there is a problem of capital or cash, but it's really just finding, again, it always goes back to finding those audiences. And whether you're a sales agent selling to a buyers, that buyer still needs to find his own audience in his own territory, right? So at the end, it's trying to really understand from a green lighting perspective who your audience is going to be. And if we can all help each other making that process a bit easier, then I think it's, there won't be any issue. And you can see people are responding well to films and TV programs that are passionate about, and whether there is going more into cinemas, with some of the independent films still doing extremely well, or whether just consuming and watching more content at home. But we just need to make sure that the audiences are still being delivered the projects that they want to see, and there's not too much in competition at sort of packages level.
Yeah. And is there any secret to somebody trying to put together the perfect package right now? I think a Safdie brother, Ping Pong, and a Chalamet does well. But yeah, is it just case by case? There's no magic number, is there?
No, there's definitely no magic number, no. But I think for us, I think the secret formula is working with teams that we know have a vision of what they want to do, and the audiences and the buyers they want to work with. Understanding that, of course, if you do 10, 15, 20 projects, they're not all going to deliver at the same level. But if you have that, and I appreciate that we are in a lucky position that we can afford to go on for a journey with these teams. But I think that is the secret, the magic formula, right? Like making sure that if you find people that you like and you think they're doing a good job, you help them in that journey, and you don't put just all your eggs in one basket, but you diversify, you allow for the right projects to emerge, and hopefully the success of those ones will also cover the some of the underperforming one.
That's the film business right there, isn't
That
it?
is the film business.
Yeah.
I think what was concerning a little while back is the fact that there were not enough hits to justify the risk. But I think in 25 and hopefully this year, we will see more of those hits coming. And when you have that hit, when you have like something like Marty Supreme or Materialist, is not just good for us, but I think it's a good news for the industry to know that there is a way of it's a proof of concept of the trying of films and projects that we are trying to do. And I guess most of the audiences of this podcast are trying to do, right? Like, we live on the edge of, we are just outside the major studios, the major platforms, but we live in that ecosystem where we still need to have those hits, those successes. And we want to keep the door open working with those studios as well.
Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. Wishing you good meetings at the EFM and continued success with Marty. And we'll be
Thank
watching
you.
for him on BAFTA and Oscar nights. And thank you for joining us and telling us a little bit more about IPR.VC. And yeah, keep taking those risks. The industry needs them.
Thank you for having me, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Andrea and Alexandra for sharing some insights with us. Thanks to you for listening. We love that you're tuning into the Screen podcast. Please do rate us and subscribe wherever you get your pods. And we'll be all over the place at the Berlinale. Please keep reading either our print dailies or read them at screendaily.com for all the latest Berlin news. A big thanks to the whole team at Screen, especially our podcast producer Ellie Cullinan and web editor Orlando Parfit. Thanks again for listening, and please do join us again.